Welcome to BrandBusters with your hosts, James Schwinn and Sean Lee. Together, we bust open the latest in CPG, retail media, and life, or whatever the we want. And for today's episode, we got something special cooked up for ya. Extra spicy. Take it away, Sean.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 15 of the BrandBusters podcast. And we have a great episode today with a founder named Dr. Stephen Goudy, who's the founder and CMO of Dr. Noze Best, a content-forward company focused on delivery of the best education and novel product solutions to improve the upper respiratory tract health in children. I'm a little biased. I've known Dr. Goudy for a while, and he actually asked me to join the board of Dr. Noze Best. It's an awesome company, fast-growing, great product. So excited to have the conversation today. But additionally, just wanted to say that Dr. Goudy serves as the Director of Pediatric, I'm going to butcher this word, Otolaryngology?
Otolaryngology, but close.
There you go.
There
Not even close at all. But and he's the vice chairman of research at Emory University for that field in their school of medicine. So really excited to have Dr. Goudy today, and fitting that we have a doctor today. James, I don't think I told you this, but yesterday I left work with some side pain and found out that I have a kidney stone, which just must mean I'm getting old, and I've never had that before. So I'm coming at you guys probably on some pain meds.
Pain medicines.
So hopefully all's well today.
Welcome to old age, Sean.
Yeah.
Welcome.
It's my first foray of dipping.
We're glad you joined us.
So Sean, what's worse, a man cold or kidney stones?
Kidney stones for sure. I thought I had like appendicitis yesterday. So
yeah, it's painful, man. It's not good.
Great.
Mm-hmm.
But it's good.
Yeah.
The audience doesn't need to hear about my kidney stone problems and how I've become completely old. But I think we're excited to have Dr. Goudy today. I think for our listeners, one of the things that I think is really interesting is most of the people we have have usually been people with a marketing background who have then founded a CPG company, or from a consulting background. I think it's really interesting. Obviously, you have a much more important day job than all of us CPG marketers. You're actually, solving problems and diagnosing issues and doing surgeries, especially with children. I mean, it's a great population to be a doctor for. So I think your perspective is going to be fascinating and really helpful for our listeners who don't necessarily have the marketing or technical background, but either have founded a company or want to found a company that's, heavily CPG and e-commerce. So really excited to have you on. And, as you were kind of in your career and you're a world-renowned doctor in your field, you travel the globe and give presentations and do a lot of research. And you obviously chair the department at Emory. I know you got your MBA, but besides that, like, what made you want to get into owning and operating a consumer good brand?
Yeah, I mean, I think anybody that's listening that has been involved in or has had a startup realizes that. I mean, I wouldn't say it's like climbing Mount Everest because I've never done that, but you have to have an unrealistic belief or desire to fix a problem that is obvious to you, and you feel like you're the most knowledgeable person to solve it, right? If all of those things aren't true, you should never start a company, regardless of whether it's CPG or not. The clarifying moment. And my wife takes credit for the company, as she should. We have 3 children, and children get sick, they have boogers. I'm an ENT doctor, so I should be an expert booger picker, but there wasn't really a hospital grade efficient way to clean our kid's nose. And so she's like, look, dude, why are we doing this stuff with tools that don't work? And so I can still remember the conversation today with a family whose child who has Down syndrome that was admitted to the hospital looked at me like, look, I don't need you, man. I just need the suction on the wall. I want to get out of here. This is not, I just need something better. And I'm like, okay, that was the moment. I knew that I'd been working on something, but it wasn't, It had not flipped over from the interest into the passion or the belief part. Like once you do, you've heard it enough times. I listened to a couple of other podcasts, and they say to listen for the echo. So if you keep hearing this echo over and over and over, like this is a problem. This is a problem. In that conversation with that family, at that moment, I said, okay, that's it. I don't know how to do anything. I'd never heard about influencer marketing.
Yeah.
I never heard of CAC and never heard of all of these terms, but I knew kind of the true north is like, I knew I had to try to solve it, even if I was going to die doing it. And I think having and telling that story, we're a double bottom line company. We're here to do well, but also to take care of patients that have Down syndrome is very important to us and our fiber. So I think everybody encounters something in their daily lives that really annoys them. I don't suggest you fix computer programs that annoy you if you don't know how to code necessarily, but maybe if you bring the right people on board.
No, I think it's a fantastic insight. From my Procter & Gamble days, I mean, it was always consumer led, right? We spent so much time and money and energy doing focus groups and trying to find what the right consumer insight was to then go solve the problem. I think it kind of evolved to, by the time I left, we were calling it the jobs to be done. So like, what job to be done is the consumer looking to hire you for? And if you keep hearing that there's a job to be done, but they don't know who to hire or there's nobody to hire, like then there's a white space where you can launch a new product. So I think that insight's incredible. And for those that are listening who don't have kids, because before I had kids, this would have went completely over my head. But basically from, the time your kid's born till, I even have a 5 or 6 year old, they just don't blow their nose. So if they get a cold, if they get sick, it just sits up there and they refuse to do anything. So it either runs down their face or causes other problems, backs up. And there's not a lot of solutions on the market. Like Dr. Goudy said, you could go to the hospital and have them suck it out. Or there's this thing called the Noze Frida, which is what I originally purchased on my registry when we had our first kid, which you basically manually stick this thing in your kid's nose and then you suck it out through a tube with your mouth, which is completely gross and disgusting. And, nobody really wants to be doing that, especially when you're dealing with germs and snot. So I think it's an awesome product. Like what he came up with is essentially an automated snot sucker that's hospital grade, that you put something like kind of the tip on your fingers, stick it in the kid's nose, turn on the motor engine of this thing that sucks out all the snot, and it works incredibly well, which is why you guys have grown so quickly and are so many positive reviews on Amazon. But I think there was really nothing in the market like solving this need. So it truly is, you had the insight from your own kids, your wife, you saw it every day in your practice, and then, just jumped in and said, I'm going to solve this problem, which I think is a great story for others looking to do the same and other consumer good companies.
Yeah.
Going off of that, Dr. Goudy. So I also have a 4 and a 6 year old. I wish I knew about Dr. Noze Best 6 years ago, because I also used to Noze Frida. It's barbaric. I had to do it sometimes when we ran out of like the little filters that are supposed to stop the snot from getting to you.
Yeah.
I feel like this is a side of parenting that is not advertised well. And you guys are very much about like education first and content. How are you making new and expecting parents? Like, is it through influencer and affiliate channels? Like, how are you getting the word out about like this need and issue? Because I think anyone that is a parent is like, I need this. I'd rather use your product than anything else that's on the market.
Yeah, I think, again, because we are a purpose-driven company, we are content forward, we're education first. And so really kind of top of funnel, I just talk to all the pain points that the kind of jobs to do or the discussions that I have with my patients, very top of funnel, on social media, whether it's TikTok or Instagram or YouTube or whatever, because I think that there's a lot of noise in the system. People are not reading anymore. They're not watching the news. They're, even questioning or not going to the doctor. They're kind of sourcing information on the internet. And so I see us as we are the brand that's built by doctors to provide you the best evidence, right? And again, because I have a network of, pulmonary doctor, lung doctors, GI doc, like this is the milieu. And so really building that ecosystem of very top of funnel, we just want to give you knowledge. I don't even care whether you ever buy a product from us or not, and then bring them into the funnel if they have a need for it. Because, you probably have friends who are like, yeah, my kid's never been sick. They may not need us, right? But for the majority of children, and James, to your point, like, these are silent suffering moments that nobody tells you about before you have kids. Like, if it's 3 a.m. and your kid just like puked all over you or can't breathe and you're scared as hell, even being like a physician, I mean, that's really being a parent. It makes you so vulnerable, and nobody tells you. Like, my dad never sat down, son, here's how this is
You
gonna.
just gotta figure it out.
You're not gonna sleep. Everybody's gonna be mad, and it's gonna make you really uncomfortable a lot of times. So, my goal is to educate people and then provide, differentiated product solutions to meet those unmet needs or those silent suffering moments so that people can help their children. I mean, the willingness to pay to make your child better is limitless.
Yeah. I think it's a great insight too. And I know from like following the Dr. Knows Best TikTok page and a lot of the content, a lot of it is you just talking about what you've seen during your day or patients you've encountered or new research or articles that are relevant. And I think in a world where people are looking for short sound bites and kind of advice and authenticity, like, you've really seemed to master the medium of TikTok or Reels. How did you get into just starting to film yourself on the green screen TikTok and talking to potential parents or people that have the need? Like, what drove you to jump into that medium?
I know that it may be shocking to you and everybody else that knows me, but I had no idea what I was doing. But some of it I can't really explain to you on air because I'm not sure how it I'll tell you some other time. But there was one day that something was really going on in the business that really people in the like, I never realized that businesses really try to tear each other down. Like, they're seemingly are bad actors.
Yep.
That really all their goal is to hold you underwater until you die. Yep. Right. I never, like, in medicine, we don't do that. Like, we may, I mean, there's enough work to go around.
There's no doctor rivalries where you're,
doctor rivalries, but
kicking people while they're down. I'm just kidding.
We don't choke people out. I mean, we don't use the rear naked chokehold to like suffocate somebody, right? So we'll go into the story later, but there was a moment in time where it was Christmas. Amazon was our only selling channel. Somebody would put the rear naked chokehold on us, pulled us off Amazon.
Yep.
And I'm like, I felt so powerless. I'm like, I'm going to do something really uncomfortable, but I'm going to at least do something and start posting every day. Because, there's a group of pediatric focused or kid focused brands that have mostly been on Shark Tank that I've been kind of following and Facebook friends with. And they're all talking about how they were doing. And I'm like, dude, I can't do that. I don't dance. I don't sing. But it was the one thing in that dark moment of like being held underwater by, the powers that be. I'm like, I can do it. I mean, it's not that hard. I mean, I do surgery. Yeah. I can at least go on and just be real and be authentic.
It's not scarier than surgery, that's for sure.
And I don't feel like as a brand, this was a long time ago, but that we're really committed to delivering information, communicating value, right? Just like giving people the right information. So that's how it started. I'm not great at it. Like, I'm a one-trick pony. I know how to do a couple things and then that's it. But, there's so much more that we could unlock.
Yeah.
But as a scaling company, you just have to pick what you focus on.
Yep. No,
I'm sorry, that was a long answer for a short question, but you got a lot out of it.
It's great.
And some other stories that we can go into at some off camera.
And how much like you talked about posting every day, how much of the success do you think in some of the views that you've gotten on the videos have been just from showing up every day and being consistent?
I think honestly, my experience with social media has been mixed. I think it's a good thing, to be able to communicate and to build the authenticity and build the brand. And it allows me a channel to relatively low yield, very quick, deliver some important facts. Occasionally it's like weird stuff happens where people in the comments start fighting with each other about something that's completely irrelevant. So I think that part, I don't know. I don't understand, but I think overall it's good. I mean, but it's honestly, it's like the stock market. You make your gains, out of 10 days out of the year of posting, right? Like, you'll post and post and post. Like, I posted something the other day that I thought was interesting to me, but probably not interesting to anybody else. But then it just took off for no reason,
You never know. You never know.
Yeah. So I don't know, but at the same time, I see other medical influencers, and there's a subset of them that are doing stuff to me that's off brand of being a doctor, which I don't want to do. Right. I think
you got to stay true to yourself and true to what you do.
Right.
So on being, a doctor, also in the academic field as well with Emory University, very intellectually driven, like a lot of like mental energy is probably expended, doing both. What is your reprieve for that? What's your outlet so that you can bring your best self and best ideas to Dr. Knows Best, to being vice chair? Like, what are those things outside of work and academics?
Yeah. I mean, I think the good news is that, for anybody that's thinking about starting a company, look into the entrepreneurial operating system. So we use that, and so I didn't start off with that. I had no idea about that, but that's a framework through which you can scale, and part of it's delegating to elevating. And I just communicate via social media now primarily. I am heavily involved in development of scientifically based things, but my day job occupies a ton of time. So this is just kind of a nights and weekend thing where I'll get up Saturday morning and I'll go and just generate 10 videos. But again, it creates that creative outlet for me, because business is really interesting. Like I said, I never knew that people would really try to kill you. Like I've learned so much about, social media, about businesses. Like, it's fascinating, and healthcare is a business. So the marketing aspect, the communication aspect, the, segmentation, customer journey is all relevant to my day job. And it makes me better at being, involved in the healthcare delivery. So.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think you touched on something really interesting too, of bringing in EOS, or the entrepreneurial operating system. James and I have both operated on that before. I've used Google uses OKRs, or objectives and key results, and there's kind of a methodology to how you plan out the year, the goal, the quarters, what you're going after. I think for anybody that's a founder of a smaller CPG company, if you don't have a system in place, I don't advocate for one over the other. I've used a few different ones based on where I've been in my career in the company, but I think get one, whatever it is, get EOS, read the OKR book, do something, because just like having a system that takes all the guesswork out of and instills some sort of rigor, then you're just not kind of running from thing to thing or shiny object to shiny object. You can at least follow a playbook and then spend your time on the things that matter. So I think that's a great insight and incredibly helpful. But as part of that, I know you, not being a full-time founder, and you're doing much more important things during the day, like surgery, everything else. How do you, since it's a night and weekend thing, how do you manage the business, and how did you put together the team from the early days? And then now I know you've got an external CEO hire over the past 1.5 to 2 years. How did you think about when was the right time to put the right people in place that could run the business for you? And who did you rely on to make those decisions, given that you didn't come from a traditional business background?
Yeah. There's a lot of errors that were made. Like, we started the company. I used internal Emory resources to leverage, and a lot of them were non-dilutive. Some of them put me in touch with some mentorship. So like if you don't have a good mentor, don't start a company. The likelihood of fail, like 90%, 95% of businesses fail anyway, and why, you wouldn't even try to go play a high school football game if you didn't have a coach, right? Like, you would go out there and just get knocked out on the first play. So you have, and there's like all kinds of barriers in the world, particularly based on where you live and where you grew up and so on, that I think is important, for us as a society to address. But if you don't have a coach, it's not going to be easy. and with the remote world, you can find coaches. But again, it wasn't linear. It's like, I would say the reason why we got a CEO is because we raised money and people passed on, and again, raising money sucks. We all know that. I would rather have people pull my toenails out than go raise money. And everybody be like, yeah, it's a great idea, but no, I don't, who's going to run this full time? I'm like,
yeah.
Well, that's a great question, right? Like, there is a life cycle to everything, and recognizing what you're good at and what you're not, which everybody should be able to say. Like, if I wanted to hang on and be CEO, I was going to kill the company because people weren't going to invest in, and I wasn't going to quit my day job to do that. So that was really the eye-opening moment. Again, we raised friends and family, and fools, right? But then I knew it was, and some of it's arbitrage, right? I mean, and I wasn't the best person to do it. So there's a multitude of reasons, and it allows me to focus on the things that I'm really good at, which is taking care of patients, doing my research, hopefully developing therapies for children. So but I didn't go into it thinking or knowing any of that, right? I had some mentors, and then I just read the room and like, hey, if we need more money and I'm not in the business full time, we're not going to get any more money.
Yeah.
So does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense. And I think one of the things obviously I'm a little bit biased since I've recently joined the board, but I think one of the things you've done really well, not being in the day to day, is seeking out board of advisors, board members, a good CEO, and putting the right people in place, or at least surrounding yourself with people that can give you, different opinions on kind of the issues of the company and direction of the company. How do you think about that? Like, how do you think about putting the right team together and how to take all the different opinions that come in to make the right decisions for the company?
And again, I think most people that are seemingly successful from the outside have put together things in just some sort of patchwork way, right? It's just, I would say I meet with a lot of people just because I'm interested. Like you and I met because Claire, who's our Amazon expert, saw a LinkedIn post that you posted
and said
she said, like, you should reach out to this guy. He's trying to buy companies. Maybe he wants to buy your company. And for the record, James, Sean said, hell no. You guys, you don't have a full-time CEO, so just call me later.
You were one of them. Sean was one of them.
Yeah,
all right.
Yeah. But no, I mean, it's like me, and I'm an extrovert, so I like talking to people. I mean, for introverts, you have to recognize that. And if you're not capable of going out and sourcing talent, you have to find somebody that can help you do that, right? Yeah. Like, and be persistent. Like I knocked down, like to get into the incubator that we're in, I knocked on the door 10 times and just bugged the heck out of them.
Yeah.
But it's through meeting people and getting them on your side and telling them a story that they're interested in, right? Like you related and James related to the story of sucking boogers out of the kid's nose. And they're like, man, that does suck. That seems terrible. Yes, I'm willing to help you. Despite the fact that we don't really know each other, whatever, we have a common problem. So it's creating a community around that common problem and showing that you're going to work hard. You're not going to waste people's time, and you're going to return the favor. So if Sean, you or James send me somebody like, hey, can you talk to this person and help them, that you do that same. So you kind of build, I think it's karma maybe, and luck.
Yeah. I think James, you have a good saying around this about deposits and withdrawals, right?
Yeah. No, I think it's anymore in society, and I'm in sales. My career's been in sales for the last 11 years. So you're always asking for something. And if you're a buyer or in a buying position, everyone's asking for time and meetings. It's just like take. If we flip that and think about how can we make deposits, whether we ever want to draw upon that later, it's more or less building that goodwill. Hey, I want to add value. I'm not going to ask for anything. Maybe that comes back around. Maybe it doesn't. But I think there's a whole line of, everyone says it's all about who you know. I say false. It's about who knows you and what's their impression of you. If you say, I can say I know Dr. Goudy, but if I call Dr. Goudy and he sees my name on caller ID, he's like, oh, that's James. I'd love to catch up with them. Where it's like, that guy again, damn it, like hang up. So I think that kind of deposit first mindset and finding ways, whether it be in personal relationships, professional relationships, is very key. So all that to be said, all that you said, Dr. Goudy, you got into something really interesting. I don't think we've talked about with any of our guests thus far. Is kind of the process of fundraising. And this is something I think any founder, like to your point, it's a tough process. I think some good takeaways that you provided were, hey, how have a full-time CEO, but like going into that process, what are some things that should be in place to make that passage a little bit more frictionless for potential founders or people that need a bridge round or whatever else? Like, what are some 3 things that they should have down pat?
I mean, there's a whole list. I mean, I think anytime you're asking for something, you need to view it from the lens of the person that's on the other side of the table. So you don't waste their time, be prepared, have your books together, have a cap table. Like when they're meeting with you, they're looking for reasons to say no. Right. Mm-hmm. And again, this podcast that I listened to says, the confused mind will say no. So if you tell them a confusing story that's not concise, that's not showing clear traction, there's not a reason to believe, kind of, which is a term that Sean uses a lot, they're going to say no. Are you the right team? Do you have the right solution? Are you hitting a big enough market? And not only that, like a lot of these people just take these meetings out of some weird desire not to have missed out on something, but most of the time you're not in your thesis, right? So they're like, you'll sit there, you'll sweat on it, and you'll do all this work. They'll have you like filling out a 100-page document, and they're like, you're not in our thesis. And I'm like, well, that was not a good use of my time. I mean, and if you're in CPG, they're not people. That's a very finite group of people that are even willing to think about it.
It's gotten harder too. Like with all recently with a lot of the things that have blown up, and I would argue with interest rates rising, when money was basically cheap or free, CPG VC was heavily funded in the 2010s. Then, interest rates rose and people realized CPG is really hard because you have to carry inventory and spend a lot on marketing, and it's not the same as a software product. So it seems like it's gotten immensely harder unless you have, really good traction, a really good product market fit, and really good financials.
Yeah, I mean, so I think like finding family offices, finding other people that, may have not just an investment thesis, but a kind of life thesis, if you will, that may more. And again, we never found that. I just, it's friends and families and fools, but, we did meet and kind of get fairly along in due diligence, Ken Wilkes, who's also on our board, is part of the big angel investing group out of Florida, and they passed, but he came on and he's been super helpful. So, but really, I think both him and you and some of the other folks really are just inspired by like the focus and the mission to make children better, right? I mean, the thing we haven't talked about is like nobody invests in children, right? I mean, maybe diapers, maybe formula. You've seen, Bobby is like blasted off, right? But again, in general, that's not a lot. Like CPG and is very similar to medicine. In medicine, people invest in developing therapies for adults, but kids, which arguably are our most precious resource, people don't invest in that as much, I don't think.
I mean, outside of toys, once you're 2 years old or out of diapers, like traditional CPG doesn't really think about you anymore, right? There's a baby section and then the toys and clothing section, but there's no real products focused towards anybody, 2 to 5, 2 to 7. I think that's a really fascinating insight. That's great. And then how do you, like, coming in, like having to learn Amazon, having to learn Shopify, some of these things, since the brand primarily is an online brand right now? I know working on some things to get brick and mortar distribution, but how was the learning curve jumping into e-commerce? Like for James and I, growing up in the space and having been here forever, I feel like I still learn something new every day, or every few months I get kicked in the teeth with something that I didn't realize, or, there's a pretty big learning curve even even for me being in the space, how did you dive right in and figure it out in the early days before you had a great team behind you?
I mean, dude, we're still getting kicked in the teeth. I would say it's more dental work than, massages that get done in our business. But I would say this, like, Amazon is a very complex infrastructure to figure out, and it really rewards those who have size and capability. Having said that, it's democratized a lot of things. I mean, it's also destroyed, the neighborhood stores, and so it's not a shining white knight as it relates to consumers and what is done to our smaller communities. However, it did allow us to get a foothold, and at the end of the day, putting your best foot forward, communicating what is the value, and finding people that can kind of get that onto Amazon. Like, even getting onto Amazon is incredibly hard to do. That's like a huge lift.
Yeah.
And because you've already built your runway of like, okay, well, we're going to get on Amazon in January. We're going to do this many sales. And then you don't factor it takes 6 months. Like, you've been helping us get on Amazon Canada, and we've been trying to do that for 8 months now, and it's still not fixed. So yeah, I think it's a slippery slope, but it's where you have to be. And you should try to figure out how to stay one step ahead of all the other people that are going to try to, black hat it and or rip you off and or, suffocate you. It's like MMA or something. It's like, or maybe it's like, I don't know what it's like, but it's serious.
Yeah.
I have a tactical medical question here. As someone that used competing products, and then also I think we had 2 rounds of tubes. What is the underlying issue for the congestion? Is it because the passageways are just like so narrow that it can't properly flow? But like, what is the root cause? And are there things that parents can do to mitigate this? Or is it just something where it's kind of comes with the territory?
I think it's a yes and, right? So kids are obligate nasal breathers for the first year of life, meaning they can't breathe through their mouth really for the first year. So, and then kids get sick a lot. They're building up their immune system. They're, if your kid's in daycare, right? Like my kids are in daycare. If you're doing the daycare shuffle, they're going to be sick literally every week, right? They're either getting sick or they're getting over sick.
Yeah.
And when they get sick, their nose gets congested. It's a virus. They don't need antibiotics, but it builds up the mucus, which are the immune cells. And so you got to clean it out. You got to use sterile saline, some sort of suction device, because then it gets backed up. The ears can get backed up. They get a bad cough. It's over and over and over, so you have a good suction machine, some saline, a good humidifier, a good pediatrician, a good spouse, because they're going to hate you because nobody's sleeping, and nobody talks about how stressful it is on the inner family, particularly when both people are working. So I don't think there'll ever be a world in which that doesn't exist, but really, to your point earlier, nobody tells you or talks about it, and demystifying it, and then really helping people understand, like, they shouldn't, like, example, like, you'll go on TikTok, people are literally putting like raw onion in their kids' socks or menthol in their kids' chest. Like, none of that's good, and it's not science-based. So how do we tell them what is and isn't okay? And you're scared, but don't put menthol on their chest. Don't put onions in their socks.
Yeah. I think there's a line I like to say: true friends stab you in the front, and there's a few applications for that. There's few applications for that. But I think around that silent suffering topic, right? Everyone's like very congratulatory, like, oh, that's so great. But it's like, just you wait. It's like, let's do our friends a service and maybe say, hey, by the way, here's some surprises. Everyone hates unsolicited advice, but like, we've been there. Like, let's see if we can help make your experience that much more net positive than what we had to go through. So
I think we're probably all type A's on this podcast, or else we wouldn't be hosting a podcast. But I now, when anybody has a kid, I have 2 big recommendations. That's how much I believe in this product, which is why I ended up joining the board. There's a thing called taking care of babies, like Cara, CARA. It was life-changing for us. Like we were struggling to sleep. We did it with our our daughter Olivia, she was like sleeping through the night within like 2 weeks of going through this like regimen and program, which is just more like structure based. We did with both our boys, and they were both sleeping through the night. Like our second one by week 13, and then our third one by like week 11. I can't take credit for it. My wife like really ran this playbook, so I recommend that to everybody. And sometimes I'll buy it for them. And then the snot sucker. Those are like the only two things that I'm like screw like all the like the bottle dryers and the like everything else. It's like these are the only two things that truly like, and they were both around sleep and our well-being. Like they improved our lives so much that those are the only two things that I proactively tell everybody that they have to get.
Yeah, the Noze bot and sleep makes your life good.
Those are the only two things.
Right, and then I think one of the things, and maybe I'd like to hear your all's thoughts on it. Like, how do you all be sales and marketing and consumer, but also want to just deliver value and just say, hey, we're not going to do this because we know we can sell it, but it doesn't really create value. It generates AOV, it generates margin, but it's not the right thing for the consumer. It's not the right thing for the world.
Yeah. I think it's a tough one. I mean, for my marketing career, for anything that I've wanted to work on, I had to for me to truly do well in the role, I actually had to like believe in the product or believe in what was being sold. I don't think, like, for me personally, there's a few things I could never do. I could never go work for like a tobacco company. I could never go work even in like the alcohol or like marijuana industry. Like, yeah, all great stuff, but I don't think I could like spend my time like marketing that full time. Happy to partake, but not going to market it full time. And then food, like anything that's like really unhealthy food that I know is just contributing to like disease and metabolic disease, like could never do it. So I think you really gotta, I think if you find the right product that you believe in, that you feel truly makes people's lives better, it makes your job as a marketer easier, because then you're not just like running the play to drive, lower cost of conversion and higher volume. Like you actually believe in what you're doing. So those things are great, but then your motivation when you do get kicked in the teeth is to keep going because you're solving a bigger problem. Anytime I've kind of strayed from that, I feel like I'm not as passionate about it.
I have kind of two lenses I look through, especially being in a seller, because I wanted to make sure that I can put my back and kind of my reputation on that. I have a saying, like, if you've bought or partnered with me once, like, you're going to do it again, irrespective of whatever environment I'm at, because you know that I'm looking out for you. Independent, I'm not just trying to push the company's agenda or just trying to get a quick sale. I'm trying to make sure that this is the right fit for you and your situation. So the first one, which you can't always do, but the last 3 companies I've been at, I've probably taken 6 to 9 months before I joined that organization. I knew Sean for probably a decade before we worked together, and an opportunity finally came up. I was in a great position at the time, and we probably talked for 6 months before that transition officially happened. Like, hey, how's the business developing? But
I was like, it's not you, it's me.
Yeah. They just raised Series A. Like the go-to-market was changing. Like there's a lot of unknown variables. I'm like, okay, like let's have a few like interactions. It's probably the same thing when you're trying to raise money. Like someone that might not invest right at the outset. Like, hey, how are you doing in 3 months, 6 months? Is the data and the trend still going well? So knowing that person in my last 2 environments, it's been a former boss that I worked with prior. So having some of that trust, because bodies are going to be buried in any environment you're going to go into. So just knowing that you have that transparency. This one I actually like to talk about quite a bit, though. I have this kind of spectrum that you can diagnose organizations on. So it's kind of like kind of a play on Simon Sinek, but looking at if a company is like exceeding or achieving, that means there's levels of accountability, which means that there's trust, which means that there's belief. If you guys if something's off in that measure, you can probably diagnose it. So if you're not exceeding results, that means someone's not being accountable in a certain function. If they're not being accountable in a certain function, they probably don't trust a colleague or maybe their superior, or don't trust the direction. And then if it's a belief issue, it's either be belief in the founder, belief in the product, or the mission. And those are all different things that you have to solve for. But any organization I look at, I make sure that, okay, where do these things kind of check down, and what can we focus on and improve? So those are the 2 ways I think about before I join an org, to ensure that I can put the prospective customer's best interests in mind at any given point.
I think it's great advice. I think you touched on something too, but I think both of you guys did in the fundraising piece. Like just throughout my career, I think I've learned I'd almost treat the fundraising piece of like, great, somebody could offer you a check, but you're also like interviewing them. Do you want their money, and what does their money come with, and what are their personalities, and do you share the same kind of time frame, vision, and morals and values? It's almost like choosing a spouse, right? Like if you don't have the same morals and values, like it's probably not going to work in the long term. Like same with anybody you're adding to the cap table in any meaningful way. If you guys don't share the same kind of morals and values and vision, like it's probably going to end in divorce at some point. So that's the thing that I think especially young founders or first time founders do, is they get enamored by the dollars and the check and say, yeah, where can I sign? And then they don't realize that they may have just signed up for somebody that's the complete opposite of them, or not a philosophical fit to what they're trying to do. So I think all those are great. I think we're probably getting close to the end here. Is there any parting advice, Dr. Goudy, you would give to any other person that's looking to start a brand or a company and solve a problem that may also have an unrelated, or not unrelated, but a day job that won't allow them to jump in 100% of their time? Right.
Yeah. I mean, I think there are a couple of things. Number one, I agree. Don't take dumb money, right? People actually say that like it's easier to get divorced than it is to get somebody off your cap table. So, and my wife is in charge of everything, so I'm not trying to get divorced, but you definitely, like, if you're not aligned with the people that put money in your company, you're going to be sunk. There's a lot, and this is probably a whole different podcast, but just thinking about the mentality of starting a company and what it's like, because it's lonely, it's scary, I mean, and again, it doesn't go well all the time. And so thinking about the psychology that you need to bring to it is, I mean, probably like a professional athlete or something. But there are a couple of good books that I recommend that everybody read. The one's called The Gap and the Gain. And the other one's called Quit. And so really, like The Gap and the Gain, and I can't remember the name of the guy that wrote it, but you guys can tag it. But it really helps you as a person flip from a gap mentality, meaning like what I didn't achieve, what we didn't hit, why didn't so-and-so do X, Y, and Z. I'm not saying, to James's point, like if there's no accountability in the organization, you should run for the hills. But if you walk around and you're still measuring the gap instead of measuring the gain, then your personal life won't be as fulfilled. And I get into the gap quite a bit, and that affects me. And all the people around. So if I stay in the gain, if I see, to my son, like, why didn't you do X, Y, and Z? Or to my daughter, why didn't you do X, Y, and Z? Versus saying, hey, it's great that you did that. It's wonderful that you've achieved this. I'm a better person to everybody I'm around. And to the psychological impact, it makes you not look at, what you don't have. And it's an entrepreneurial journey. So I definitely recommend that book. And the book Quit tells you that everything you do should have quitting rules, meaning that I'm going to start this company, and then I've already agreed that here are the preset numbers that if we don't hit them, I should just wind it down. Here, this is project I'm going to run. We're going to test this hypothesis. If we don't make X by Y, we're going to stop. We're going to pivot. Like pivoting is the right thing, but like we become almost I become almost like a pit bull. Like I stop thinking, right? It's this like basal emotion. Like I can't quit. I'm going to run through the wall. It's like, dude, the wall is going to be there. You shouldn't run through it. Just find the door around it, or just go find another wall that you can run through that's smaller or something. So I think there's a lot of mentality parts to it, and if you're in CPG, it's going to be much worse, right? Because it's hard to raise money. People are trying to choke you out all the time. You don't know how to do it, and there's such a size advantage that it can be, you can't just like, software never sleeps, right? Like if you hit a home run with your software, you can scale money. Yeah, you can scale it, but CPG is hard. So again, it's not a downer, but it's just like, the mentality, the thinking of how you approach it and letting yourself be okay if it's not working out, letting it go, because killing things quickly is much more advantageous than living a slow, painful death, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that's great. And that's one of the things in my past life when I founded the Zevo brand at P&G, which is a safe insect control brand that's probably now, I think, 150 million in annual revenue. Early on, we were very clear with like different buckets of things we were measuring. We would create different KPIs around like, if we fell in this range, we would pass. If we fell in this range, we would pivot because we think something's there. And if we hit these, we persevere because we know we're onto something. And even when you did that, like still making sure everybody was honest and accountable. Once you did that, it was always hard, right? Because nobody wants to say, "Hey, this isn't working. We're going to pass." But I think as long as you set that expectation up front and set those criteria, then it makes it a little bit more objective than just trying to run through the wall and hang on. So I think that's great. And I think we can probably end on that fantastic advice. One thing that I would say for all the listeners, we don't monetize this. We're not sponsored. We don't do commercials. We really try to add value to people that are listening. So if you're in CPG, please share this with your friends, your colleagues, anybody that would benefit from it. We like feedback. We like connecting. We're all social people. So please follow or connect with James and I on LinkedIn, on Twitter, X, whatever they call it now. Do the same with Dr. Goudy. I'm sure we would all appreciate that. And yeah, if you need any help with 3PL services, I have a 3PL that I run as part of my day job, and we do a lot of direct to consumer fulfillment and Amazon FBA prep. If you need help with Amazon advertising and platforms around that, James at Quartile is the man to talk to. So thanks for listening, and we always appreciate it. And thank you, Dr. Goudy, for joining. And we'll look to continue following up with your story and hope all things go well with Dr. Knows Best. I'll give the crowd an update, I'm sure, over the coming months and years on the pod.
Sounds great.
Thanks again, and until next time.